was Tua, I would probably call it a career. I would probably call it a wrap. If Tua was my son was playing football, I would suggest calling it a wrap. But I'm not a pro athlete. They are hyper-competitive. They fight to the end. And in team sports, they often feel a guilt to teammates and coaches in letting them down. It is real. It's one of the many reasons pro athletes are admirable and redeemable. They fight. They play through pain. They don't want to let teammates down. They cry when they do. I'm thinking about this morning. I wonder if the NFL should not consider an amnesty clause. Every team gets one every 5-10 years, that if a player gets a concussion or a serious possible career-ending injury, the player gets played, but it doesn't go against, it's an amnesty clause, it doesn't go against one every 5-10 years, your salary cap, so it doesn't punish the coaches or the teammates. Because I think Tua's probably going to talk himself into playing again. And I'm not sure he should. He's a great guy, very thoughtful, and he's a wonderful teammate. He has an incredible reputation in the league. And I think he'll talk himself into playing. I think he'll have doubts. Reportedly, a member of his family's suggested it's time to quit. I think I would, but that's not the way pro athletes are. Andrew Luck was rare that in his 20s, in his prime, he walked away. But it's very hard for pro athletes to do that. I mean, think about it. Most of us go to college and we start thinking about our careers. But the journey for a professional athlete often starts when they're 6, 7, 8 years old. People sacrifice for them. It's their identity. It's a lifestyle. Tua has been a quarterback back in Hawaii for, probably started at 6 or 7 years old, and he's, 26 years old now? Something like that. It's a big part of him. He's got a life beyond that, but it's a big part for pro athletes. And it's a real palpable thing. They feel guilt. They hurry themselves back to play. I've talked to NFL athletes. I had dinner last night with an NFL executive, and he said, we have to sometimes tell players, you can't play this week. You are too hurt. You have to protect them. They fight to the finish. It's not what I do. It's not maybe what you do, but it's what they do. Should the NFL consider somewhat of an amnesty clause to protect the players from themselves? Again, Tua's decision, it's his. But my guess, he'll talk himself into playing. He'll say things like, I'll be smarter next time. I could have avoided that. Hey, I didn't get hurt last season. And maybe all those are true. But being a pro athlete is almost addictive. It's a wonderful life. It can be a tough life. It can be a physically punishing life. But just to ask Tua on his own to step down and retire, all the coaches, all the teammates, there's a bond in pro sports that's hard to explain. A lot of teams, there's limitations on when guys like me are even allowed in the locker room. And truthfully, I never like going into them. It's a sanctuary for pro athletes. It's a club. I haven't earned the right to be there. They have to let us in, but it's a special place. It's a special bond. I've been around pro athletes. I've seen them cry years later recalling games. They're in their 60s and 70s. Those were 50 years ago. There's really nothing like it. And more often than not, when you pay a player, and Tua just got the bag, they feel a responsibility to not let teammates down, coaches down, fans down, the franchise down. Oh, they could. A lot of people could get the money and then take work off a little early. But that's not how Tua works, and that's not how most pro athletes I've known worked. I think I would call it a wrap. Mike McDaniel, the very bright head coach of the Dolphins, offered this after.
I'm just worried about the human being from a medical standpoint. That's I don't approach things that I'm far inferior of expertise. For me to go ahead and forecast things that I don't know in my non-field of expertise, I don't think that's appropriate. I was just worried about my guys. So, not something that you ever want to be a part of.
Yeah. So I was really on the fence about even making a video talking about this, honestly. I was thinking about it as soon as it happened last night, because I really don't want to make content on this type of topic, on this type of serious situation. And I'm certainly not going to call for someone to tough it up, or call someone to retire, or tell them that they need to like end their career. One of the best things that happened to me was when I was trying to do certain things within my career. I had a very experienced, powerful person tell me, I asked them, I said, do you think I can do this? And they said, well, I'm never going to tell anyone if they can or can't, because who am I to tell them what they can or can't do? And I remember I just like wanted them to tell me, do you think I can? And they refused. And in hindsight, it was absolutely the appropriate way to go. But in terms of, struggling to give up, struggling to throw in the towel, struggling to say, okay, it's over, like it's absolutely accurate. I don't even think you need to even make it to the levels of the NFL, just high levels of sports. Any athlete will know, it's just, you're trained at such a young age. Like I've been playing sports competitive, like not competitively, but I've been playing sports since I was 3 years old. And it absolutely becomes your identity. Your majority of your core memories are locked up into sports. And especially if you're good, especially if as soon as you hit like 7, 8, like you are starting to play like competitive sports, depending on the league itself. Usually the most competitive sport that you can play that early on will be typically like soccer or basketball, not necessarily football. It just kind of takes time for those to get like really hyper competitive, although it may change now, at least when I was growing up. And so it's just one of those things that you're taught so young to just be so resilient to adversity, to never give up, to never doubt yourself, to constantly push yourself, to grow, to go harder, to be the strongest, fastest, best person you can be. Like especially when you're at such a young age, you're constantly failing, right? You're constantly struggling, and that's how you continue to get better and better and better and better and better. And so the amount of resilience that majority of athletes, outside of maybe the super freaks who just don't fail, like the LeBron Jameses of the world, like you just, the level of resiliency that you get, and your lack of even knowing what giving up means, is just so embedded into you. And I found it benefit my life significantly, and I've also found it hurting my life, because there's certain times in my life that it was like, no, you need to like give this up, or you need to stop doing this. And it was always like, no, if I just work harder, try harder, put my head down and get to work, like I can find a way through it. And it's like, that's not always the answer. It's not always the answer. You have to kind of learn, like sometimes it is appropriate to say, no, okay, I'm giving up on this, or no, okay, it's just not going to happen, whatever it may be, whether it be something work related, socially related, dating related. I feel even like my dating life sometimes has been impacted so significantly with sports, because it was like, I can get that person, right? If I just try real hard, and, she's not interested in right now, but I'm going to convince her. Like, it's just the influences come from literally every direction. It really has. Even me doing this channel, it's like I could feel the sports background just pushing, because I significantly struggled to try to get anything going. And it was like, no, never give up, never surrender. Let's go. And so I know someone like Tua is feeling that way. But then also there is the human side, because you could see immediately, as soon as everyone on the field knew what happened, everyone took a knee, everyone. And I know we've all become more understanding of concussions and injuries, and these players do hang up the battle shields as soon as something like this happens. But you could just tell immediately, like everybody understood what was happening with Tua and the implications for it, right? Like it was so clear. You could just feel it, you could sense it, you could watch it. Everyone on that field was just like, oh my God, can't believe this just happened again. And it's devastating. It really, really is devastating. I'm not going to come up here and say Tua needs to retire. I'm not going to come up and say even what I would do in this situation, because I have no idea. I really don't. I think I get when Colin said, if he was my son, would I tell him? Because I think that you could understand, because you're like, okay, especially Colin being, a lot older and having, children that are around that age. And he's probably looking at some of these young athletes like, hey, like if they were my kid, what would I do? What would I say to them? And I can appreciate that. I could totally understand that, but it's just Yeah, it's just so tough. It really is. This story is just so frustrating to me. And when I made Tua videos and Miami Dolphins videos, months ago, just talking about going into the season, I think even before Tua was even paid, it was just like I made statements that people really were not happy with. And I said, listen, I think Tua is a really good quarterback. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's elite. And one of the big problems with Tua is that he can't necessarily put the game on his back. He can't be super physical. He can't just, take over when need be. And people got so mad, so mad. And unfortunately, this was an example of that because he was trying to take over the game. Nothing was going right. There was no separation offensively, and so he made a few mistakes himself without a doubt, but he was trying to correct for them and just trying to put this game on his back, running for first downs, fighting for another first down, trying to get a touchdown. And again, like, I admire his ability to just never give up, never surrender, to lay it all on the line. And he was doing that. He was leading towards a drive, and it was pretty much single-handedly him. He was about to close the gap, put up 17 points, let's go. You don't know if he could have, had a comeback. And then that happens. And it's just like, it's just so frustrating that sometimes those are the hands that were dealt. Like, there's nothing special that someone like Josh Allen does where he can just barrel through people, take hit after hit after hit, whereas someone like Tua can't. And it's just sheer luck. It's not that Tua doesn't work hard enough. It's not that Tua doesn't want it hard enough, or that just Josh Allen wants it more. Like, it's just not the way it works. There's just such a either luck component, genetic component, whatever it may be. It's just out of Tua's control, and you can tell how much of a competitor Tua is, and that's why I rather keep this real positive, because I admire that. Like, he's not dumb. He knows all the concussions. He knows the symptoms that he experiences through anyone who's had a concussion. Like, it can get weird at times, for sure. And so, he knows firsthand what it's like to have all those concussions, and he's watched the film and he sees himself, and he's having the conversations with his friends and family and doctors, and, he knows it all. And yet he still goes out there. He still does everything he can, and he still risks and sacrifices and lays his body on the line, all for a football game. At the end of the day, it's just a football game, and it is admirable, but it's tough. It's tough to watch. It is, I fundamentally think Tua is just such a good person. I really, really wholeheartedly believe that. And I've said this in so many Tua videos, and I said this yesterday, I believe. I want to see Tua succeed. Tua is the type of person that I want to see succeed in the league. He's the type of person I want to be elevated just in our society. I'm not going to turn it politically, but like, there are a lot of bad people who have a lot of success, who are very famous, who are either play sports or whatever, and we celebrate them, we worship them, we praise them like they are kings and queens of the world. And yet there's plenty of other really good people who don't get that level of attention. And like, Tua he's not wildly popular, right? There's other athletes in the NFL that are way more popular than Tua. And to me, Tua is very much deserving of just tons of fame, tons of success, just tons of admiration. And so I was so happy to see him get paid. I was happy to see him get that contract, because it was hard for me to see him playing until he was 39, 40, 41, 42 years old. And I know, that's the level of money that was, going to be truly life-changing, generational, that was going to take care of his family for generations, the kids of the kids of the kids of the kids of the kids, like, to his family for just ever. Every single next generation that comes after him within the Tua Tagovailoa family will never have to work again. As long as they're just semi-smart with their money, the amount of money that they have, they will never, in fact, their fortune should only grow, right? Unless they just spend wildly and are just, inappropriate with it, they will never have to worry about money ever again. And that makes me feel good, knowing that. That makes me happy, knowing that at the very least, he's in a position to do that. Quite frankly, even with his rookie deal, it should be enough for him to never have to, for none of his family, generations ever have to work again, even before the $200 million contract. You might not be able to live that private jet life all the time, but, with interest, with basic, traditional, very secure investments, he would be good to go. until the year, 10,000. So I take solace in that personally. But yeah, I'm curious how this lands for other people. When you're watching this game and you see Tua go down. I'm not gonna talk too much about it because, like I said, I was so on the fence of even making a video about all this, and hopefully, this content that I created was at least more supportive and not like, hey, let's just magnify this negative issue for the sake of views, for the sake of engagement, for the sake of money, whatever it may be, because that's not my intention at all. And that's why I'm hopeful that at least I brought like the human side to this. And yeah, I don't know if there's really much more to say to that. But yeah, those really are just my thoughts. I really would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. I would appreciate it if you guys, for this video, at the very least, can just keep it positive. Usually I always say, hey, I read every single comment. Let's get in discussions. Let's get in some fights. I would prefer not to get in any fights or have anything for the sake of this video. Try to keep it a little bit more positive. But hey, just share your thoughts. Let me know what you guys all think, and I will see you next time.